So here we are with one of my top coaches, Dan Barnett. Dan's obviously been with me since I started the company off back in 2014, I think it was, wasn't it? When you first started, well, when we first started working together.
We started in 2013, but yeah, the company was 14, wasn't it, really? We started at the end of 13.
Yeah, no, it was, I always remember meeting Dan. Basically, I was sat round a result board and he just looked a bit lost. Like, I think I'd won the event and Dan was like, yeah, you've been coached for a while, haven't you? But like everyone was starting to develop, come on, like aerodynamics was really going to kick in. And then I just remember you like a bear with like a straw head, wasn't you?
Yeah.
Strong like a tree, there's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon.
What I kind of explained to Dan was that it's not just about like the training, it's almost like you have to utilise like everything. You have to look at like power, aerodynamics, and that's what we first brought into like your training. I remember you went from like I'd say you were making like top 10 at that point.
Yeah, I would guess sort of top 10 opens.
Yeah, and then I remember you going from that, going on to basically like winning open events. It was my first case study as like a coach. Yeah, and I remember the biggest thing that you really struggled with, that you just had like generally like 6 hours a week training, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much young children at the time.
Yeah. And that time, like obviously, like you're working full time. You've got 6 hours to train, and obviously, like you want to race at like weekends and stuff. But I think that year, did you manage to do? I think the initial goal was to break like 19 minutes.
Yeah, so we started and we came to that, and I came into cycling in sort of 2005, the end of 2005. I sort of did one club turn. I'd had a bike about 2 weeks. I'd come into it sort of just looking for something else to keep fit after boxing and gym work. Had always sort of been part of my life, but it was just looking for something else. Bought a bike. 2 weeks later, did my first time trial. It was sort of terrible. I felt like I was flying at the time, but people just kept coming by me. But sort of back then, although it doesn't seem that long ago, it was totally different. There was no coaches, and power meters weren't sort of all on the scene at all back then. So it was quite different to people that are starting up now. The information just wasn't out there. So yeah, it was sort of a big thing for me, and I'd started and I wanted to break. Well, your goals just move as you go along. You start and you want to see the club fast lads, and you want to do a 21-minute 10, and then you do a 21-minute 10, and then you want to do a 20-minute 10, and he just kept moving like that, and I'd sort of plugged away under my own steam for a little while, and somehow managed to do like a 19-minute 10. That was sort of my big goal at the time, and then it very, very much sort of stalled. The following year, I just did one more 19-minute 10. It was 1 second faster, so I didn't really get any quicker. So then you start sort of exploring things, and I bought a power meter and had sort of some coaching, simple sort of coaching. But again, it kind of worked till it didn't work, and then it just sort of stalled again. And I think that was at the point that we met, and I'd got, I was working sort of continental shift patterns and 48 hours a week. I got 2 young children, one really young and one a toddler. And that was it. Yeah, things had stalled. There's sort of a limited amount of time available. It was like you were saying, sort of 6 hours. So it was we sort of worked on finding the best way to find.
Yeah, no, definitely. I always remember the fact that, because I based like everything I did in coaching at that time was based around you. I remember being marked down on my paper because, the person that marked my paper basically said that no one can train on 6 hours a week and be successful. And I think it's the biggest thing that I think like most people actually struggle with, is just not having enough time to train, isn't it?
Well, I think that's the thing. I think they have got the time to train for what they do. I mean, obviously, time crunch training has its limitations, and nobody's sort of dismissing the benefits of endurance work and things like that. But it's a case of finding sort of a different way that fits in your life. Because it's a real shame if somebody was wanting to compete and they were like, no, I can't do that because I've only got 6 hours a week. I've only got 8 hours a week, and that's sort of where my coaching is at the minute, and specialising in is finding out where we can work around that, where you can still find the endurance. So it's, like I say, it's not dismissing the level 2, but there are other ways to do it.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing now. There's just like so many, I don't know, like you look out there and everyone is zone 2 training the new thing, is periodization the training thing. But I think like what I personally found, and I know that you have, it's the variation and training for the
training for the event, the demands of the event. Yeah. So, if for a lot of the people out there, the guys that come to us and the girls that come to us, they're sort of wanting to do 10s and 25s, and if you want to do 10s and 25s, they sort of look at the pros, and the pros are doing all this endurance work, and I need to do loads of level 2, but they're doing sort of 20 hours of level 2 a week, and you can't afford to be just sort of rolling around at level 2 if you've only got 6 hours a week, can you? It just doesn't make sense, and then expect to sort of go and perform hell for leather on a 10 or a 25.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that's the key part, really, and that's the thing that that I would say that like where your strengths really are. It's not just like the training program itself. It's kind of the feedback that you're trying to engage with the athlete that you're working with.
Obviously, if the duration for training comes down, then the intensity obviously has to go up for it, and it's a case of managing that intensity a little bit. And that's where the communication with the rider comes in, because obviously it's quite fatiguing, and a lot of the people that I coach have busy lives, busy jobs, and they've got kids. So you have to take into account other stuff that's happening in their lives at the time, and that's not always in training peaks. Yeah. So you can see the fatigue that they're getting from the sessions in training peaks, and the feedback from the sessions is key, because they could have other things going on in their lives.
Yeah, and so when you generally coach, like say I'm this new rider that you take on, like what is your is your coaching philosophy? Is it like what you're trying to understand from that person?
You've got to understand. Well, first of all, you need to know what the goals are, what the target events are. Their available time, and I always say when I'm talking to new riders, you may think you want to do 12 hours training a week, but if you haven't got 12 hours a week, don't tell me you've got 12 hours a week, and then only complete 6 hours of it or 8 hours of it, because the training that we structure for an 8-hour program will be very different to one for a 12-hour program. So you've really got to understand how much time they've realistically got, and what else is going off in their lives.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, that's the biggest thing that most athletes, they start the year and they come on for coaching. They want to use like every hour that that they've got, really. But it's kind of like utilising those hours like throughout the year. And then another good thing is, so obviously, I've got this training program now. Like, how do you feed back to me? Like, how do I interact with you?
Okay, so we use Training Peak. There's always a place in there for comments, for post-ride activities, and it's just, and I say that to riders, you can put as little or as much you like in there, and everybody's a little bit different with that. Some people are happy to just leave a short one sentence, and other people, want to leave you quite a bit. But it's all valuable. It might be that you've only done quite a simple sort of lower intensity session, and there's not much to say, but just a simple, yep, all went okay is fine.
Yeah.
But if you've done sort of heavy interval work, you might want to say, look, this just felt way harder than it should have been, or this felt easier than it should have been, and you just get to build up a little bit of a picture then of how that athlete's feeling.
And just tell us, like, some of the athletes that you've worked with, Dan, like, obviously, like, you've achieved, like, some great things, like, with some of the athletes. What are the most things that I'd say that you're proud of with athletes that you've worked with?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about sort of predominantly about the time crunch training side of things, but, that's not to say that you can't build a degree of endurance off the back of this. I've worked with athletes that have been at the sharp end of the National 100, and they've done this off of the 6 and 8 hours a week.
Yeah.
And even like, my hours coming into this have been a little bit terrible, sort of 3-4 hours a week, but then I'm, in the last 4 days, what have we averaged 3-4 hours of upper zone 2. So you are still building an endurance base from this training. But yeah, I've done sort of a wide variety of people up from 12 hours, and there's sort of I've got people in France doing sportives off the back of it. But there's also the key element of my coaching is the 10s and 25s.
Yeah, no. And you've had like some of the success you've had with athletes in the past has been unbelievable, really. Is there any ones that really stand out to in the past, or that are coming? We've got like some great athletes that are coming through.
Yeah, I think you get a lot of pleasure from working at it from sort of both ends. We get sort of we get some sort of novices coming in. And it's great to see them sort of progress very quickly, but then it's a different kind of challenge when you get a guy. I had one guy, Stu Travis. We had him come to us, and he was already at a good standard, and he's doing sort of 50 minutes, 25. That's it's a very respectable kind of ability. And then after a few years with him working, and he's done a 44-minute 25. And he's
still the current comp record.
Still the comp record holder for 30 miles.
Yeah.
And obviously the guy himself's incredibly dedicated, but this is all still off of 6-8 hour weeks.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely, and there's just some of the athletes that we're just picking like specific ones now, like people like Debbie Bradley went from running to duathlon girl as we know her, to then doing TTs and
she had a season where running is, and that's the other thing that you have to take into account is the age of the athlete that you're working with. I'm nearly 50 now, and from experience that the recovery and just basically what your body can do. It's not a limitation, but you have to factor that in. But yeah, Debbie came and she was running, doing a lot of duathlon, and done quite well. You get niggles and injuries with running a little bit, don't you? So decided to have a season focusing on TT, and fabulous results off it. Up the sharp end in the nationals, and
yeah, now we've got some great athletes coming through, and like David Halliday is another guy that stands out. But I think that's the great thing, we're just picking on specific athletes now. But if you look at all where these people started, it's initially they start with a specific goal, and then you work towards that. Yeah,
it's hugely satisfying that side of things. And like I say, it really doesn't matter if you take on a guy that's doing a 24-minute 10 that wants to do a 22-minute 10, or you take on a guy that's already sort of knocking on the door of the podium for opens and get him to win his first open and things like that. That's the hugely satisfying thing.
And I think as some people want short fixes, but in your opinion, how long would you generally say that it takes to kind of find gains?
Yeah, I think a lot of people start coaching and they kind of expect in 2 months' time I'm going to be really banging it out, sort of thing, and it's that just isn't realistic, and a lot of the time when people come to me, it's quite a shift in how they train. So it's almost like say they kind of expect that first year to be the big improvement jump, but I very often find it's more the second year, because that first year is spent sort of, firstly, both of us building up a relationship and getting to know strengths, weaknesses, and that kind of thing. And it's the second year when you can sort of really focus on it. And it's that second year when they've got used to your methods of training and the brutality of it, really. Because it's if you are wanting to do well and you've only got sort of 6 to 8 hours a week, then it's not always pleasant stuff.
Oh no, not at all. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? And I think the biggest thing that I've learned with all of this training, it's like for most people, is that there's no easy wins with it. You've got to be wanting to be dedicated, and you've got to have the motivation to want to do it.
To get the most out of it, really. Yeah, you have to be. You have to be consistent. We all know them from coaching that consistency is a real key factor in it all. Yeah. And that's when you really start to see the results, when people are consistent and just do the sessions, tick them off, and.
No, totally. And I understand you want to race again this year, mate. Is that
right.
You got any specific goals you're going to work towards?
Don't call it a comeback. I'd like to race again. I've had a few years out with other stuff sort of going on in my life, and it sort of got pulled up a little bit by COVID, and then it snowballed into a few other sort of personal things that went off in my life. But yeah, this year I'd kind of like to do some racing again. I'd like to do some team stuff, some team time trials. But yeah, I feel like I've missed it a little bit now.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to see, having you back, and for me as well, it's given me the motivation that I want to train again. So we're going to be out there smashing it up, I guess.
Yeah, I think we are.
Yeah, no,
I think we are.
And if you want to know more about you, Dan, obviously you can message us on Matt Box Performance Coaching. But whereabouts can we find you?
On Instagram, quite a bit. Under the Magic Man 1826.
Magic Man, that's
thing, the old Magic Man. That was it. I should probably explain that, because I get asked that a lot, actually, where the Magic Man thing came from. So it was sort of going back to that when I did that one time trial in the end of 2005. It was sort of a friend from work that had been doing a bit of racing, and he asked me to come down and do a time trial. And like I said, I literally had a bike 2 weeks, and I set off in this 10-mile time trial, thinking, 25 mile an hour here, I'm absolutely flying. And then the people started coming by me. Yeah, I finished that, and this guy at work, and I think they'd expected things from me. You know, I'd come from a boxing background, a lot of fitness background, and this guy just sort of buried me, you know, with minutes in front. And I thought, right, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I thought, I'm going to work for next year. So I came out next week, and I was still on a road bike, and we did the first race of the season, and I flipped it around, and I sort of beat him by minutes. And it was the time there was a film, Will Ferrell film, Talladega Nights, and John C. Reilly's character, and that was called The Magic Man, and he had this slogan, and now you see him, now you don't. And this guy was like, Dan Barnett, now you see him, now you don't. He's the Magic Man, and that's where it came. And I was, I joined the time trialing forum at the time to try and get a bit more information on it. So it was like, oh, I needed a username, so I just put Magic Man down, and it snowballed then, and people were just coming up to me at events and like calling me Magic and things like that. So
but I think that
wasn't always quite relevant, but yeah.
Oh no, I think that's a fantastic story. So ultimately, like like you've been on that journey, and that's come across in the, like your coaching really, hasn't it? You know, like it's kind of like you've been through the process.
A lot of people that are coming to me now. My kids are a little bit older, but they're still there. But yeah, through sort of most of my time trialing career, I was working continental shifts, and then I was trying to train as well, and got the young kids coming along, and from some babies to toddlers, and they all have their own demands, and
15 still smashing it.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah, hopefully.
Well, I think that's a good roundup of everything, really. So, obviously, you want to know more about Dan, or you want to know any more stories, then get in touch.